Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow. We are back here in the new studio for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the gold standard in Iowa conservative entertainment. John Hendrickson and myself today. And John, we have got a lot to go over.
We do, yeah.
Okay,
yes,
good. So
yeah.
Buckle up. I hope you're ready to go. This is probably going to take most of the rest of your afternoon. So Get ready. All right. Well, good. It's been a while since we've had you up here in the studio, but we are going to touch on the latest ITR Foundation poll. And I'd like to take a quick look at maybe some legislative races around the state of Iowa. I know we've talked a lot about that, but now that we've got some data, does that impact any of those things? And then I'd like to talk for a little while about last night's vice presidential debate.
Yes, yeah.
Which I know that you have some thoughts on that as well. So there's your quick little preview. Again, as a reminder to everyone out there, we're on all major audio platforms. We're on YouTube. On Spotify, you can get the video podcast as well. So there's really no excuse for you not sharing this with everyone you know and making sure you're liked and subscribed in all those different places. It'll help us out a lot. So, John, we're right at about a month until Election Day. I don't know how many days. Do you have a countdown going?
I don't know, but it's getting close.
You don't have one of those paper chains like you used to make for Christmas?
Yeah, no.
on days until Election Day? All right. I think we're not quite at a month yet. So I think it's November 5th. So we're recording today on October 2nd. So let's call it 34 days. I don't know, something like that. But so we have the latest right here in, as what Rush Limbaugh would say, my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, but mine are not that. So they're just plain old fingers. But I've got the ITR Foundation poll. So, and I know you've had a chance to look at this well. Did anything stick out at you on this? Because I have a couple of quick of takeaways, but I wanted to see what your thoughts were first.
Well, I thought one takeaway was just the big question, because it differed so much from the Register poll between Trump versus Harris,
right?
And our poll was much different, and I would first I think we should say that this is a professionally done poll, so it's not a push poll, it's not a bias poll,
right.
It's a professional poll.
I even saw it somewhere. It was described as an internal Republican poll. Like it's none of those things.
No.
This is a top-rated pollster by nonpartisan, even left-wing ratings orgs that we hire to get honest data because we think it's part of our mission. So
yes,
absolutely, and it's not affiliated with any party or political campaign at all.
No. So it's
good.
independent.
We got that settled.
But I thought that was interesting to see those numbers, and which I thought was more accurate, depending the political culture of Iowa, showing Trump was still a comfortable lead.
Right. I think a couple of my takeaways are similar to that, John, is that obviously these numbers fit a little better with what my gut tells me about the state of Iowa than the Register's poll, which showed Donald Trump only up 4 points, which just defied believability. We had the president up 7 in our poll, which, look, I don't want to second guess our own pollster, but I could even see it being, in the end, I could see him winning by a little bit more than that. The number that I've looked at a lot in the past in other polls and ours is the generic congressional ballot. Because that's generically, do you want to vote for a Republican or a Democrat for Congress? And that often translates down to the legislative level as well. And that was a +8. Now, it was +10 the last time we did this over the summer. So what's the difference? Is are Republicans sliding? Is the gap narrowing? And that was that tightening was a little bit on the presidential race as well. The big thing here is Republicans coming home. In previous versions of the poll, there was a lot of Democrat dissatisfaction with President Biden. Left-leaning independents were dissatisfied with President Biden, and that was translating down the ballot because the Republican, the number of people who say they want to vote for the Republican candidate actually increased over
Yes,
our last
yeah.
poll. And the number of people that say they want to vote for President Trump or have a higher approval of President Trump, those all increased. But they had a much bigger move among Democrats. So Democrats have a bigger bump in enthusiasm. They're much more excited about Kamala Harris than they were for Joe Biden for whatever reason, Pulse being one of them. But
Yeah.
I think that's the big story. But I think the other one that's really interesting to take away from this is just how stable things have been. Yes, there's some movement, but the sort of unconvinced voters on each side always come home late at the end, and that's to be expected. But one of the things that we like to test a lot in this poll is some of these tax questions.
Yes, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of hit on that a little bit as well. Before we get that far, we asked respondents, what's your top priority? And this goes back to the stability thing. What's your number one issue? What's the thing that's impacting your vote? And almost identical to the last poll, which was in July, was inflation in the economy. That's number one.
Absolutely. Yep.
Followed by illegal immigration and the border. We asked this, again, to show you that we're trying to be fair. Threats to democracy. I know it's one of your favorite terms, John.
Yeah,
but we asked
yeah,
that straight up that way.
Yeah.
15% of voters say that's the number one issue. Okay. Abortion, 10.6, and the rest of them are under 10% on a variety of different issues. But those things have all stayed very much the same. They're all within a point or two of what they were over the summer. In which my takeaway is that Iowans have decided where they're at many months ago, and that's still where they're at today.
Yeah. They're still concerned with inflation. They're still concerned with immigration, and those are the two big issues.
Right. I think that's right. One more thing on this top priority, and I'm probably spoiling a little bit what I wanted to talk about in with the legislative races, but up and down the ballot, it is all abortion all the time from Democrats. It is, if you watch the local news here in Central Iowa, you're probably going to get multiple DCCC hits on Zach Nunn about abortion. And now you've got Democrat legislative races finally on TV. I saw last night a hit against Senator Brazon on abortion, and a hit on Dallas County Supervisor Mark Hansen on abortion because of his long track record of handling abortion at the county courthouse in Adel. But it's just on and on and on. But what we've got is data that says that it's only about 10 or 11% of Iowans have that as the number one issue, but yet that is just all we hear about.
Do you think that's more for them to get their people out to vote? Is it a more of a mobilizing factor to get Democrats out?
It has to have something similar to that. They have to have data that shows that that's what.
Yeah.
Now, the cynic in me says that's about the only issue where Democrats generically are winning. Because if you test folks, who do you trust more? On the economy, they're going to trust Donald Trump and down ballot Republicans. Poll after poll shows that. Or immigration, they certainly don't trust Joe Biden on immigration. And so maybe the perspective is that's the only one we're winning on, because they are. I mean, but I think there's some motivating. I think there's some there's something to that. But somewhere they have data that shows that if they play that card, an undecided voter will vote for their candidate, or a voter that might not otherwise vote will get up out of the and take the trip to the local polling place and vote.
Yeah.
So it's something like that. But I tell you what, it's so much that I wonder for the other 90% of Iowans who care about other issues, if it almost ends up backfiring. So we will see.
And I think this is an issue too, where Republicans need to. And I know this is not necessarily our issue as an organization, but we personally have an interest in it as individuals. But I think just speaking as a conservative, I think Democrats are they're coming at this, and you saw this last night in the debate where Walz was definitely very passionate about this, and they come at it from a moral issue. I think Republicans need to start addressing it from a moral issue as well, and they need to start coming at this and defending life from a moral perspective as well, just as the left is defending. They're calling it reproductive health, women's health, and
they get to use whatever terms they want to define their issues.
Life. There's we need to defend life. Yeah. And I think Republicans need to do a better job of sort of defending that against the attacks from the left.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly no limits to the hyperbole that the left is using on this issue.
Yes, yeah.
And
we saw that last night during the debate
that's right. And I have many thoughts on that as well, and I don't want to go too far down that trail of arguing abortion, but specifically to Congressman Nunn. Well, first of all, there's a great many issues he worked on in the legislature, and I think it's just simply wrong to define him as somehow a one-issue crusader on the issue of abortion. I mean, that's laughable. But what we're talking about, the law in the state of Iowa, is not an outright abortion ban. And, life at conception, as we've talked about it, has really never gotten very far in the legislature, even with these wide majorities. And the fetal heartbeat law that we have in Iowa, with exceptions for rape and incest and life in the mother, is, I believe, fairly close to what the middle road position is in this state. It's incredibly hard to pull, and it's difficult to explain to somebody what that actually does. Maybe certain people would want to go further, but abortion on demand to the 9th month or to the moment of birth, and then some, according to Governor Tim Walz.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, let's go in and throw a few moments after birth that it should be legal, just to be sure that we got them. I don't believe is the majority position of Iowans or all Americans.
Yeah.
And so, and I think, look, I don't share President Trump's view on this issue, but he's trying to find some level of consensus or some, kick it to the states, whatever. I don't want to speak for the president, but I can understand politically at least why he's trying to go there. But then that's all to your point, John, that I'm not saying we have to fight back, but I am tired of the entire issue being litigated on the Democrats' terms.
Yes, yeah, yep.
Because that's not where Iowans are at. So,
you're
now,
right.
John, I think we should talk about issues that this organization does care about.
That's right, yeah.
Which are taxes.
Yeah.
And so we asked these questions last time, and I think what we'll find, again, is a tremendous amount of stability in what the polls say and what Iowans believe on taxes. And so I don't want to belabor this too much, but there are 2 constitutional amendments which have been proposed. And those have to pass 2 consecutive General Assemblies. So they have passed the first one, and then presumably sometime in 2025 or 2026, the legislature could then pass it again and it would go on the ballot. We got that. The first one is a supermajority to raise taxes. So the legislature, if ratified, the legislature would have to pass by 2/3 majority anytime they want to raise taxes. In July, 69.6% of Iowans supported that idea. And in September, 69.6% of Iowans support that idea.
Yeah.
This is twice in a row where you have it's hard to find any issue on which 70% of any block of voters agree. So I feel really good about that one.
Yeah. And also, looking into that deeper, it's a bipartisan issue. I mean, it's you have strong support across the divide on this.
I believe, I don't have the crosstabs in front of you, but last time, over half of Democrats supported this idea.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So
you had strong support of Republicans, Democrats, and independents on this issue.
That's right. If nothing else, if you are a state legislator faced with this decision in a vote on this, you're in incredibly safe ground politically to vote for this and, frankly, the rest of these tax issues.
Yeah.
You're Republican or Democrat.
Yes.
You're on safe ground voting for this.
Yeah.
Okay. Similarly, now this one's a little trickier to dig into, but the income tax amendment. So the way we phrase this, would you vote yes or no on amendment to the Iowa State Constitution that would guarantee a single uniform income tax rate for individuals, commonly referred to as a flat tax? You want to make sure you phrase that the right way, in a way that's sort of neutral and not, so just constitutionally enshrining the flat tax that we already have.
Yeah.
That is a 44% yes and a 29% no. So it's still a plus 14.
Yes.
But you have a high undecided on that.
Yeah. And I think one reason for that is the flat tax is, the first time we'll get it is next year.
Yeah.
And so it's still a new idea for Iowans. And so I think there's a lot of people that are still learning what a flat tax is and the benefits of it. And I think once Iowans learn why a low flat tax is good, I think you'll see the support of that increase.
I think that's right. I think another one is there's been a lot of disinformation out there on what we've done on taxes over the last few years. And if you ask the question, do you want it to be hard to raise your taxes? Everyone can answer that. No, I want it to be hard for you to raise my taxes. That applies the same to every single person, regardless of their financial situation. Somebody might be sitting there on the subject of a flat tax wondering, how does this impact me? Because ultimately, your own individual bottom line is what matters. And so they may be thinking, well, I don't know. If it's a flat tax, do my taxes go up or down? And so I think there's an education that has to happen there. But even so, you're still looking at a plurality of Iowans to support the idea.
Yeah. And there was, if I remember the last vote, there was not many, but there was a few liberal Democrats that voted for that in the Senate, and I think one or two in the House. Yeah. I think, I shouldn't say any names until but I think at least one or two in each chamber. Yeah.
The third tax question that we asked is, and John, I'm going to let you explain, but we've talked about a 2% cap on property taxes. So take just a minute and explain what that proposal means.
Yeah.
When we talk about a 2% cap.
So it would basically be what we mean by 2% cap is that property taxes would not be the county, and this only apply to counties and cities.
Yes.
And so they would not be allowed to collect more than property taxes not be allowed to grow more than 2%
in aggregate across.
That's right. Year, and so it'd be capped at 2%. And this is what is generally called a levy limit on property taxes, and a majority of states have some form of levy limit. And so you can even look at blue states like New York and Massachusetts that have levy limits. In fact, New York has a levy limit that has a similar 2% limit. And they have some there's some, as they say, the devil's in the details on these levy limits. But basically what it does is it restrains the growth of property taxes, and so it forces local governments, in a sense, to sort of control their spending. And it's not, I don't want to call it a spending limitation, because it's not necessarily what we'd call a full-blown spending limitation, but it would, in a sense, restrain the growth of property taxes. And so it would, in a sense, provide relief to taxpayers, and it would slow down the what I would consider, I think what we would consider to be the out of control growth of local government spending. And so this would be a reasonable approach to reforming local government spending, as well as reforming property taxes in Iowa, because one of the reasons why all these other reforms have failed in the past is that they don't address the cause of it, which you and I have repeatedly said is local government spending. And so if you don't address that, you're not going to see property tax relief. And so if you cap property taxes, we did a study on this, or the foundation did a study on that. And I think there'd be just this year alone, if we had a 2% cap statewide, it would be what, a $250 million saving. I think
that
it was.
sounds about right.
I don't have that study in front of me, and we did another study where we kind of looked at some different cities and counties at different growth levels, and this is not this is not an aggressive cap. I mean, it's a very common sense approach that would actually serve taxpayers well, and that's why we're seeing a tremendous support for this. Again, bipartisan, close to 70% support for a 2% property tax cap. And again, that's you have Republicans, Democrats, Independents supporting this. So it's to me, it's a common sense reform.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's right. So, and we ran the numbers, and I couldn't find them here as I was flipping through this, but cities and counties were somewhere in the 6.5% to 7% range of what they grew last year.
Yes, yeah.
So we passed a strong reform, and yet here we are. City and county budgets grew by far more than household incomes grew.
Yeah,
grew by almost double what the state budget grew.
Yeah,
and so Iowans are mad, and they want some solutions. Clearly, at least in aggregate, I'm not trying specifically not to paint with too broad of a brush, but clearly local governments cannot police themselves in this matter because they haven't.
Yeah.
And they will talk about all of their costs going up and everything, and the still yet to be defined unfunded mandates that they claim are coming down from the state, but yet they never provide examples.
Yeah.
Is that it's now time for the legislature to act. And so the people of Iowa, so I'm bringing this all the way back around to our poll, John. So we ask, okay, Iowans, you're mad at, we know you're sort of frustrated with your property taxes. How about a 2% cap? How's that sound? 70%. Well, okay, let's 68.6% of Iowans support that. So similar to the 2/3 majority on the constitutional amendment, Iowans by a wide margin. Yep, it's time. Legislature needs to limit local governments. It limited it to 2%.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of different proposals of what to do on property taxes. I suspect that of all those that we will see talked about at the legislature this year, a 2% cap is going to be one of the more significant ones. There will be other softer ones, but ours will be among the strongest ideas proposed. And so the strongest one still has 70% support. And so the point, again, if you're a hypothetical legislator that's faced with this issue, you have almost 70% of Iowans that support a very conservative 2% cap. And you have almost 70% of Iowans and half of Democrats that support telling local governments enough's enough. And you have wide majorities that clearly, okay, let me back up and say this a different way. When the legislature is considering this idea, you and I both know you're going to have cities, counties, their lobbyists, your local mayor, your local school board officials, your local city council people, and they're all going to come up and they're going to try and tell these legislators that they can't do it. It's local control and it's too hard. And we have all these things and we're going to lose police and fire, which isn't true. And all of these problems that they're going to come up with every reason in the book to try and kill any real property tax reform. And my point, based on these numbers, which have been stable every time we've tested them, John, is that the wide majority of the voters that send them there want real solutions. Their mayor, the city council, the board of supervisors aren't the ones that are going to get them reelected time and again. It is the people of Iowa that have said, we need answers.
That's right.
And that's the people they ought to be listening to when it comes time for the next round of property tax solutions.
What this poll has shown us, both this poll and the last one, is that basically Iowans want tax relief.
That's right.
They want tax relief, and they want common sense tax reforms. And look at you and I both talked about this before. The state is governed by the 99% spending limit, which is not an aggressive one, but it does help. And there's no reason why locals can't have something similar. And look at what the governor and the legislature have done with income taxes. since
Yeah.
2018 is basically they have, been careful with spending, and they've been able to reduce income taxes responsibly, and there has not been a drastic cut to the budget at all, and priorities are still being met. So this can be done at the local level as well. And so what Governor Reynolds and the legislature have proven is that, this can be done. And what Governor Reynolds has also proven is that, at the same time, you can also reform state government. And so local governments can do the same thing. And so I think they're so used to being on autopilot that, they just think, well, we have to continue to just build on, budget after budget. Governor Reynolds did the first government reorganization in 40 years. And that's going to start paying off for taxpayers.
That's right.
And making government more efficient. And so, I probably mentioned this before, but I remember when I was on library board, and we this is just a small example, but when we had a new library director, as a finance committee, with the library director, we started going through that budget, and we found all kinds of waste, from people ordering too much office supplies and all sorts of things, and that adds up in a small budget. And so things can be made differently. There's reforms that can be made.
There is always room to save.
Yes, yeah.
In a government budget.
Yeah,
always.
And so the idea that that there's that 2% capping property taxes at 2%, and one thing I forgot to mention, Chris, is that there is within our proposal there is a relief valve, and so if the people, if the city or a county, think they need more than 2%, then it goes to the vote of the people. Justify why you need maybe 2.5% or 3.5% more, and then let the people decide. And so that's very reasonable.
Right. Well, it is. So I think you hit on something there, just about how much Iowans want these things that are happening, specifically tax cuts. And so I want to kind of wrap this up, because I want to transition to something else that you just brought up. But look, if property taxes came back as a 5% issue and no one cared, we'd still be on it, because we're convinced it's the right thing to do, and that's what we do for a living, and that's what we believe.
Yeah.
So it's not just that we believe that. We have data that shows this is what Iowans want.
Yeah.
And especially when it's as across the political spectrum, there's a duty on behalf of the legislature and the governor to do these things.
Yes.
So what we can say from this poll, and if I'm extrapolating too far, John, you're welcome to call me out on it, but there's one thing that Democrat candidates are promising. What do I get out of this election if I vote for liberals? If I vote for Kamala Harris, it appears the only thing I get is more abortions. But if I vote for these conservative legislators and governor that have delivered on these things, I'm going to get the tax cuts that the majority of the people of Iowa want.
That's right. I think
so. It seems to me that the candidates that are speaking to these kitchen table issues, because also in that issue set is taxes and all the other fiscal issues. That's what Iowans are asking for. They're asking for more work on those solutions.
Yeah.
And so I want to mention this because I hadn't intended to bring this up, John, but it fits in here really well. Governing Magazine, which isn't something that's on the front and center on the newsstand when you go buy it, but it is a well-read periodical in especially among state legislatures.
It is a professional magazine.
Right, it's really good. I mean, look, if they've profiled me, and then it's legitimate, and they have. So, but. But they have their 2024 Public Officials of the Year, and one of these is our own Governor Kim Reynolds. And the headline here, which is just spot on, Kim Reynolds has reshaped both policy and the state government in Iowa. The subheading here: the Republican has rewritten the tax code, streamlined agencies, which you just brought up, upended the state's approach on issues ranging from abortion to education. And I mean, we know all of these things. We've talked about all these things, but here is a truly nonpartisan publication that's acknowledging just how much she has done on all of these issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would naturally, I'm going to gravitate to the quote here from Senate Majority Leader Jack Whitver in this article, saying that Governor, and this is from, I think it was a quote he gave to Governing Magazine last year because they had done a profile on him. But Governor Reynolds really lays out a very aggressive and bold and conservative agenda. She's not afraid to stick her neck out and go big and bold to put her reputation or her favorability on the line. And the reason I want to go to one, I always like to read Whitver quotes, but the reason I go there is because this is exactly the issue. If you want to go be Larry Hogan, governor of Maryland, and just have everyone like you and do nothing and spend your entire time trying to get the other side to like you, you can do that and maybe even have some good approval ratings. Kim Reynolds has decided what she believes, what she thinks is best for the state of Iowa, is not afraid, and is willing to put it all on the line to get those things done. And I will tell you that I will take that every day of the week over a do-nothing person that is constantly worried about their approval rating and the next election.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the measure of a real leader.
Yeah, I agree, and I think most Iowans support that, and most Americans really want that, and they're tired of the status quo type politician.
Well, good. I was going to, all right. I feel better now.
Yeah.
I had to get that off my chest. I wanted to talk a little bit about the state legislative races, but I don't know that we kind of touched on a little bit throughout there. But I do think that the final thought on the poll, with the generic congressional ballot of +8, is in line with some of the best environments we've had in Iowa. Mm. So I still feel some take a little bit of allegiance to that, but those large legislative majorities were built and maintained in worse political environments than this one.
Yes, yeah.
And so you have both House and Senate Republicans out there outspending their Democrat opponents. They've got great candidates in the swing districts, not to diminish the Democrat candidates because they have some good ones as well. And we've talked about that on this podcast. But you got more money, you've got good candidates, and you've got a great environment that's almost a historical high watermark. I still think it is very possible that these big majorities actually grow even further this fall. So that's my 38, 35, how many days out we said it was. There's my early take, is I still think they're both going to grow their majorities this fall. But we'll see. So
that's a good prediction.
Now that we've gotten through all of that, let's go talk about the top of the ballot and talk about presidential race, John.
Yeah.
Because you were very, very late to work today.
Yes,
The demerits were issued.
Yes.
I stood there by the time clock most of the morning, wondering when you were going to punch in. So we have not had a chance to talk about the vice presidential debate yet.
And I was really excited about it.
Yeah. So I want just go. Just tell me what you think about that debate.
Well, I thought it was really good. I thought I thought Senator Vance did an outstanding job. I mean, he I thought clearly did a good job defining the issues. It was, in a sense, he was going against not just Governor Walz, but also two very liberal moderators who were injecting their opinions and even fact-checking him at one time.
Which they said they weren't going to do. They specifically said, if you want the fact checks, go online.
And even, I forget, Nora O'Donnell even put in her own editorial about global warming at the end. I mean, it's just the media bias is, I mean, that's a separate topic, but I thought Vance, I mean, just very, very strongly communicated the agenda of the Trump campaign and defended the record. And also, he really reminded the American people that, if Kamala Harris and President Biden want to do all these things, why haven't they done them? If they want to improve all these things, if they want to bring down inflation and all that, they've been in there for 3.5 years and they haven't done anything. And I think Senator Vance did a good job of not only defending what President Trump has been campaigning on, but also pointing out that Harris has done nothing. I mean, literally nothing in office, and that.
Well, except be the casting tie-breaking vote on
Yes.
things like the Green New Deal
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the Inflation Causing Act
Yeah.
and all the.
And I think you saw Governor Walz, and a lot of his answers were just basically empty, and it was basically the same tired old, in a sense, tax and spend approach of this opportunity, so-called opportunity economic agenda that Harris is proposing.
One of the more vapid policy proposals in the history of presidential campaigns. But
Yeah.
So I still have no idea what that means.
No, I mean, and her campaign slogan, "New Way Forward," is. It's the other thing I thought Vance did well on is the moderators were going after Trump's economic plan, saying, well, the experts say this, and Governor Walz said, well, the experts say this, and the PhD economists say this, and Vance I thought just nailed it on the head and just said, it's those same experts that said it was a good idea to outsource our jobs to China and to do all these things, and look what it's gotten us.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great response. And the same thing about foreign policy, and Walz was saying how Trump is awful on this, and he touted that Harris is the endorsement of Dick Cheney, which I don't think is a very good thing. But
stop! I've already decided I'm voting for Trump and Vance. You don't need to keep selling me.
But what Vance said is that Trump, there was no wars started, no new wars started, and there was, in a sense, peace through strength.
Yes,
and there was stability, and that was a good reminder. And he reminded that they have done nothing. In terms of the crisis on the southern border, they've made it worse, and so I just thought Vance really did an outstanding job. I thought in that debate.
I agree, John, and I'm going to take a little bit of a contrarian position. Outside of 2 or 3 responses, I didn't think that Governor Walz was. I thought he actually did a passable job. I think if you put his performance last night sort of up against other vice presidential debates we've had over history, I think it was acceptable.
Yeah.
I think he delivered the Kamala Harris line on things like opportunity economy and saving democracy. The stuff that, frankly, you and I could probably go up and deliver their message for him. It's so canned, and we've heard it so many times. I actually thought he did okay, and he looked a little. He was clearly nervous at the outset of the debate and fumbled over some things, and he was just awful on the Tiananmen Square question, which I did appreciate them trying to push him on that. When it's like, you said you were in China during Tiananmen Square, but multiple reports say you weren't. How do you explain that? His answer was, I grew up in a small town in Nebraska. It was. I mean, that was the answer. So, great. I mean, rule number 1 of media training is, don't answer the question you're asked, answer the one you want to answer. But so I actually didn't think he did that bad. I think what I was surprised by is how good J.D. Vance was to those things. It just was, he was able to give the informed position, do it clearly, do it in a contrast way without being overly combative or overly abrasive. I think sometimes he went a little too far in trying to be Midwest nice. Because I guess I kind of like some bare knuckles politics sometimes.
He was very professional.
But he was. He was and you saw him after the debate. The two introduced their each other to their wives and had a nice visit. Great. That's nice to see. I don't need it out of my candidates, but great. But I think clearly it especially as much as especially Tim Walz had tried to criticize him for being weird and all these other things, which apparently personal attacks only matter if you're Donald Trump. When other Democrats make them, they don't matter. But all the times they called him weird, he wasn't weird on there. You know what I saw? I saw a guy who loves his family and went to Yale Law School. And I thought J.D. Vance was terrific. And because I'm somebody that wants to compete in the marketplace of ideas and have these debates about what is really the best path forward. And frankly, it's not even that hard of a sell. Is that, look, when Donald Trump was president, things were good. We had peace in the world. Our economy was flying. People had jobs. Let's go back to that.
That's right.
And then you say, look, over the past 3.5 years, all of that has been lost. And the idea that the Democrats have of trying to tout jobs numbers, it's like, well, yes, it was your COVID shutdowns that your people championed so much that took the job numbers down. So you don't get credit for that. So anyway, I thought J.D. Vance was just terrific. And I told my wife as we were watching this last night, I said, I don't know if vice presidential debates matter for who's going to win. I don't know if the people are going to, all of a sudden, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because I liked what J.D. I think there's probably a little bit of that. But I think the biggest lasting impact of that debate last night, John, is I think that J.D. Vance has cemented himself as a front runner for the nomination in 2028.
Yes.
Win or lose.
Yeah. No, definitely. He is the future of the America First conservative movement. And one comment I have overall of the debate, and this was partly the fault of the moderators, but I noticed that first of all, they were talking about both candidates in terms of their economic plans and running up the deficits and the national debt, which I thought was interesting. But then they also, every question afterwards was about how is the federal government going to respond to child care, paid family leave, all these other issues. And I thought traditionally these all should be state issues.
Yes.
And yet, it's almost interesting how, we're concerned, they're asking about the debt, but yet they're also expecting these candidates to have federal solutions to all these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also scary because it shows how big of a leviathan the federal government has become. And so, and it shows that basically, even an issue as much as, my grandma or even my mom never considered, Uncle Sam or even the state to even funding child care. And now today everyone expects government to pay for it.
Right.
And so now it just seems to be, to me that's concerning because it's almost like we're in a hyper New Deal era.
Well, it is. We don't need government solutions to every issue that face people in their lives. And I think that's maybe my biggest reservation about some of what was discussed last night is just it never ends.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
And the problem isn't just the cost. It costs a lot. I mean, our taxes or our children's or our grandchildren's taxes are going to go up every time somebody starts talking about first-time homebuyer tax credits and child care tax credits and housing and on and on. Every one of those adds to the debt, and somebody has to pay the bill at a cost. That's not even all of my reservation with that as a fiscal conservative. And you know what, John? I guess what I'm going to say this, and I'm going to want you to keep this in mind. I want to talk about this in more depth in a future episode. But whenever government grows in these areas, the individual and the institutions that we depend on shrink. When you lean on government to deliver your child care, and you lean on government and you depend on it for your ability to secure housing, and you lean on government to whatever it is, buy your first home, you, your family, your community, your church, and those things that we have always depended on as a society, they become less.
Yes, yeah.
And those institutions are the ones that have made our society and our nation strong. Mm-hmm. And yet we pursue policies that not only cost us a lot, but they shrink those things that we truly ought to depend on.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So maybe we can talk about that more some
yeah.
other time.
No, I think that's a very important thing to talk about.
Good. So it's not just about the bottom line. It's about even more than that sometimes.
Yes, I agree.
So, John, we are so far into overtime, I've lost track.
Yeah.
Anything else about the debate last night that you want to make sure you hit on?
There's a lot of things to talk about, but I was encouraged by it. In fact, I've been I'm hoping a little too pessimistic about this election, but I was a little more hopeful after listening to Vance. But because I thought he just did a good job of defending the cause.
I get asked a lot, who's going to win the election? Because for some reason people think that I've got answers. I don't know. I don't have a guess. I really think it's that close right now. Mm-hmm. If you just took a snapshot of every poll out there, you would say, well, Kamala Harris is up a couple points. Swing states look close. She's ahead a little bit, maybe. But what I do know is that Donald Trump was doing much worse in the polls, both in 2016 and in 2020,
Yes.
than he's doing today
Yeah.
in 2024. And I honestly think it is, if you're go and look at a betting market, I think you're getting 50-50 odds on either one of them right now.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And I've talked to a lot of blue-collar workers that are just really strong supporting former President Trump, because they know that, as one told me, they said, I've never made any more money under the Trump years, and I never had more work under the Trump years.
Well, and again, that's the chunk of voters out there that care a whole lot more about their personal and their family's future
Yes.
than they do about abortion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Anyway, I agree, John. I think if this is about issues, if this is about the future, it's about kitchen table issues, if it's about peace and security in the world, I don't know how the Democrats can stand on the record of the last 4 years of Joe Biden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
They can't.
They
I mean,
can't.
that's
So-
why they're running on this myth of new way forward.
Yeah. Well, call it whatever you want.
Yeah,
The new
yeah.
way forward sounds like 4 more years to me, and I don't think the American
Yeah.
people can afford it.
No.
So,
Nope.
Okay, John. Well, on that note, thank you. Thank you for your comments on especially on the vice presidential debate. Thank you, listeners. Thanks for being with us today. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends. And with all of that being said, we will see you next time on ITR Live.